The children under the lake. It was supposed to be a quiet spring break. That's what I kept telling myself when the wheels of my rental kicked up gravel as I turned off the main road. The car trembled as I crossed the narrow bridge, really just two concrete slabs laid over a runoff stream, and into the dense forest. Trees arched overhead like knuckles, their bare branches brushing the windshield like fingers. There wasn't much signal out here. One bar. Then none. That was fine. I needed quiet. A week away from the cities, from my job, from the blinking inbox and shallow texts and pretend laughter. I hadn't taken a vacation in years, and the Airbnb promised peace. A lakeside cabin, surrounded by trees, no neighbors within a mile, stocked fireplace, porch swing, and that view, the water. That's what sold me. Mirror Lake, they called it. I didn't realize then how literal that name was. By the time I arrived, the sun was dropping behind the trees, turning the water silver and orange. The cabin looked exactly like the listing, 2 stories, aged but clean, with that warped charm of old wood and fading green paint. There was a dock stretching into the lake, and a canoe already tied up. A rusted bell hung from a post near the porch. I rang it as I passed. The sound was dull, muted, like the forest didn't want to echo it. Inside, the air was stale. Not musty, just still. Like nothing had moved here in a long time. There was a subtle scent of cedar and dust. I opened the windows and let in the cool air, then set my bags down and plugged my phone in. It was dead. Not low dead. Weird, since I just used it to follow GPS up the road. I checked the cord, tried another outlet. Nothing. I shrugged. I came here to disconnect anyway. After a dinner of gas station snacks and beer, I took a chair out onto the porch and watched the lake. The wind picked up. The trees swayed. I heard them before I saw them. Laughter. Children. Not close, but clear. Soft, like a memory from the next room. I stood. Walked to the edge of the dock, scanning the lake. It rippled in the moonlight, disturbed only by the occasional fish or bug skimming the surface. The laughter came again, faint, echoing across the water. My first thought was someone else must be nearby. Maybe the listing lied. Maybe there were neighbors. Then I realized something else. The laughter wasn't coming from the woods. It was coming from beneath the dock. I knelt down. The wood groaned under my weight. Peered between the slats. Nothing. Just dark water below. Moving gently. Too gently. And then something floated up. A small handprint. Pressed against the underside of the dock from below. It vanished as the water shifted. The laughter stopped. I backed away slowly, forcing a chuckle. I'd had 3 beers. I was tired. Stress does weird things to the brain. Sound carries in forests. Water distorts it. I told myself a dozen things, none of which I believed. But I went inside. Locked the door. Pulled the curtains. And didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid. Because I started hearing tapping. Very light. At the window. First one. Then the one across the room. Like tiny fingers. Dragging down the glass? I didn't check. I couldn't. When I woke up, the taps were gone. The cabin looked normal in the morning light. Birds chirped. The lake looked blue and wide and welcoming. My phone still wouldn't turn on, so I grabbed a book and sat by the water. Canoe still tied up. Everything still. Peaceful. Until I noticed the footprints. Tiny. Barefoot. Leading from the water's edge to the base of the dock. Then vanishing. They weren't there yesterday. I looked around. No one. I checked the earth around the cabin. Found another set, smaller still, circling the porch and stopping by my window. I almost left that day. Almost. But I didn't. Because when I walked back to the porch, I found a necklace. A child's necklace. Wooden beads strung with twine, lying on the top step. It hadn't been there before. I picked it up. It was warm. And wet. I threw it into the woods. By nightfall, the tapping came back. Harder. Insistent. But this time, the windows were too fogged to see through. From the outside. I didn't open the curtains. Didn't move. I sat on the floor in the dark, holding the fireplace poker, every muscle rigid. At 3:14 a.m., the porch bell rang. Just once. A single, hollow chime that sank into my bones. Then silence. The kind that presses on your skin. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of drowning. Hands pulling me down, not to kill me, but to hide me. To keep me. I woke gasping, heart pounding. The sun was already high. And on the porch, in a neat pile, was the necklace I had thrown away. Surrounded by 3 small, muddy handprints. Part 2. The night crawls and singing. I didn't touch the necklace. I stood in the doorway for what felt like an hour, just staring at it. The beads looked darker in the daylight, polished, almost. The twine was still damp, and I could see tiny indentations in the wood. Bite marks. Baby teeth. I swept it off the porch with a broom and let it roll into the yard. I didn't want to burn it, or bury it. I didn't want to touch it again. It had already found its way back once. Instead, I told myself it was a prank. Some sick joke from local kids, maybe teenagers who knew the cabin's rental history and wanted to screw with the next unlucky city slicker that rolled in. That theory didn't explain everything, but it was better than where my thoughts were going. I spent the afternoon trying to busy myself. I chopped firewood. Skimmed leaves from the lake with a rake I found in the shed. Cooked an actual meal instead of another snack bar dinner. I didn't check my phone. I already knew it was still dead. By sunset, the wind had picked up. The lake looked restless, choppy, but only in patches. Like it was moving from underneath. The trees rustled, but the birds were gone. I hadn't noticed that until the quiet became too much. Then I heard the bell. One soft chime. I turned slowly, heart suddenly a live wire under my ribs. Nothing on the porch. No breeze to swing the rusted bell. I stood there in the yard until the sky was bruised purple, then forced myself to go inside and lock up. I shut every curtain. Lit a fire. Turned on every light in the house. The necklace was in the hallway. Not on the porch. Not outside. On the floor, just inside the front door. Dry now. Clean. I left it there. I couldn't bring myself to touch it again. I sat by the fireplace for hours, clutching the same fire poker like a lifeline, waiting for something to break the silence. Every floorboard creak felt like a footstep. Every gust of wind brushing the roof felt like fingers dragging over the shingles. At some point, I must have dozed off. I woke to music. Children's music. A broken lullaby playing on something warped and slow, like a toy left in the rain. The sound was faint, coming from outside, or maybe underneath the house. The melody looped again and again, each time slower, until it faded into nothing. Then came the tapping. Window to the left. Window behind me. Tap, tap, tap. Scratch. Like nails on old glass. Not hard enough to break it. Just hard enough to let me know something was there. I crawled into the kitchen, staying low, my breathing shallow and fast. The windows were fogged again, same as the night before. I don't know how. It wasn't cold enough for that. I crept to one of them, wiped away the condensation with shaking fingers. There was nothing outside. Just darkness. Trees. Lake. And movement. Something darted past. Too small to be a person. Too fast to be a trick of the eye. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. It hit the floor with a crash, echoing like a gunshot. The tapping stopped. The music didn't return. For the rest of the night, I sat on the kitchen floor with my back to the pantry, every light still burning. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink for a long time. I watched the hallway, the door, the windows. I watched the necklace, still lying in the hallway like a dropped toy. At dawn, I opened the door and threw the necklace into the lake. It made a soft plop. The ripples disappeared fast, as if the water was eager to take it back. That morning I tried to leave. I packed my bag, threw everything into the back seat of the rental, and reversed out of the gravel driveway. The bridge wasn't far. I saw it through the trees. Maybe 2 minutes of driving. Then I passed the sign. "Welcome to Mirror Lake." Again. I slammed the brakes. I hadn't made a turn. Hadn't looped around. I'd driven in a straight line. But there was the same sign. Same leaning mailbox on the left. Same broken birdhouse in the tree. Same warped tree trunk shaped like a question mark. I turned the car around and tried again. And passed the same sign again. And again. On the fourth loop, the engine stuttered. The needle dropped from full to empty in seconds. The dashboard lights blinked red. Then died. I opened the hood. The engine was full of water. Not oil. Not coolant. Water. I walked back to the cabin with wet shoes and shaking hands, the trees whispering louder than the wind should allow. Inside, the fire had burned out. The house felt colder than it had any right to be. In the corner of the living room, a puddle had formed. And in the middle of it, floating perfectly still, was the necklace. I left it there. That night, I slept in the upstairs bedroom. I didn't want to, but something in me knew it didn't matter where I went anymore. The house was theirs. They were just letting me pretend otherwise. I bolted the door. Blocked it with a dresser. Stuffed a towel beneath the crack. Kept a flashlight and knife beside me in bed. I dreamed of the lake again. But this time, I was on the bottom. Not drowning. Just there. Floating. Eyes open. Looking up through water at the moon. And around me, other faces. Small. Pale. smiling. When I woke, the towel was gone. The dresser had been moved. And scratched into the inside of the bedroom door, in crooked little letters that looked etched by a fingernail, was a message. "We made you a place. We remember." Part 3. A place for you. I didn't leave the room right away. I sat there in bed with the covers drawn up, staring at the words carved into the door. The scratches were deep, raw. Flakes of wood curled outward from the grooves. They hadn't been there the night before. I would have seen them. I should have heard them. Unless I got out of bed and peeled back the curtain. The lake was gray in the morning light, heavy with mist. Still, the trees looked farther away now, like the house had drifted a few feet out of place. The fog curled in tight swirls across the lawn. I looked down. There were footprints in the dew. Tiny ones. 5 sets. Coming from the lake. And none going back. I closed the curtain. All day, I heard movement upstairs. Light footsteps. Not heavy enough for an adult. Sometimes quick, like a game of tag. Other times slow, deliberate pacing. Scratching. But I never went up to check. Because I never left the upstairs bedroom. I stayed on that bed for hours, watching the shadows crawl across the floor. I tried to write. To read. To think. But the house made that hard. My memories started to unravel. Not all at once. Just little things at first. I couldn't remember which day I arrived. I couldn't remember if I had emailed my boss before I left, or just decided to vanish for a week. I couldn't remember the name of the woman I dated last fall. Her face was there. Her laugh. But not her name. The house was doing something to me. Or the lake. Or whatever lived beneath it. By nightfall, I'd worked up the courage to leave the room. Not because I felt brave, because I was starving. I hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. I walked down the stairs slowly, each one groaning like it wanted to wake the dead. In the kitchen, the smell hit me first. Sweet. Rotten. Something old and wet and hungry. The lights flickered. I didn't bother turning them off and on again. It never helped. I opened the fridge. It was full. It hadn't been yesterday. Now it was packed with food. Fresh fruit. Meat. A full cake on the top shelf, iced with the words, "Welcome back." I slammed it shut. The sound echoed too loud, like the kitchen had grown larger. I turned and saw the hallway light was on. But I hadn't turned it on. And standing at the end of the hallway was a little girl. Dripping wet. In a tattered white dress. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just looked at me with wide, dark eyes like wells. Her mouth was too small for her face. Or maybe her face was too wide. Her hair clung to her cheeks like moldy vines. She tilted her head. And in her voice, 5 others spoke through her. "It's almost ready." Then she vanished. Not walked away. Vanished. Like the hallway had inhaled her. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Something about her voice froze all the air in my body. Instead, I walked to the dock. I don't know why. It was like my feet were moving without me. The wind had picked up again, though I couldn't hear it in the trees. Only across the water. Like the lake was breathing on me. The canoe rocked gently. I didn't remember untying it. There was something inside it. A box. Wrapped in cloth. Tied with string. I knelt at the edge of the dock, reached in, and pulled it out. The string was knotted tight, but the cloth fell away easily. Inside were bones. Small ones. Tiny ribs. A jaw. Fingers. All arranged carefully around another necklace. This one made of teeth. Baby teeth. I dropped the box. It didn't hit the water. It was just gone. Like the lake absorbed it. The wind died. The canoe was empty again. And I wasn't alone on the dock anymore. There were footprints beside me. Wet. Bare. And when I stood, I could feel breath on the back of my neck. I turned slowly. Nothing there. But the bell on the porch rang. 4 times. Then silence. I slept with a knife that night. Kitchen steel, dull but heavy. I dragged the dresser in front of the door again. Stuffed towels under every crack. Put salt on the windowsills. It didn't stop them. Not really. They just got quieter. More patient. And they started to whisper. Sometimes in the walls. Sometimes from the vent. Sometimes just behind my ear. I'd wake up with my legs wet. Once, I found leaves in my bed. Another time, a single shoelace, small, pink, frayed at one end, wrapped around my wrist like a bracelet. I found a photo on the kitchen table the next morning. It was old. Faded. 5 children, standing in front of a dock. Smiling. Not at the camera. At the water. One of them was holding the necklace. The one made of teeth. Their faces were blurred, on purpose. Scratched out. Like someone had tried to erase them and failed. On the back, someone had written in pencil. "We gave you a place. Now you give us yours." That night, I didn't close the curtains. I needed to see the lake. I needed to know if they were coming again. At 3:14 a.m., the water rippled. Even though there was no wind. A hand rose. Then another. And another. Until 5 heads surfaced. Eyes open. Smiling. Watching the house. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. I already knew. They were waiting for me to come down. Because my place was ready now. Part 4. The house that watched itself. The children watched all night. They didn't blink. Didn't speak. Just hovered at the edge of the dock, half submerged in the lake. Faces turned up toward the house like sunflowers. Smiling with lips too still. Eyes too wide. I didn't sleep. I sat in the upstairs window, staring back at them, trying to convince myself I still had a choice. That this was just a nightmare I could wake from, drive away from, forget. But dawn came, and they were still there. One by one, they sank beneath the surface, without ripples, without bubbles. Like they'd never been there at all. The house creaked in relief. And for a moment, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe they'd had enough of me. Maybe I'd been spared. Until I went downstairs. And saw the front door wide open. My shoes, still damp from the dock the day before, were arranged neatly on the welcome mat, side by side, laces tucked in. The floorboards leading from the entrance to the kitchen were wet with footprints. 5 sets. Each one stopping at a different place in the house. One by the window, one by the fridge, one at the stairs, one just outside the bedroom door, and one at the base of the attic ladder. I followed that last one. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. Something in me knew, whatever I was meant to see, whatever they wanted me to remember, it was up there. The attic smelled like old rain and earth. The kind of smell that doesn't belong in wood and insulation. The kind that belongs under the ground. There was no furniture. Just dust. And in the middle of the floor, a circle of small handprints, pressed into the dust like they'd been made yesterday. In the center of the circle, a tape recorder. It clicked on by itself. There was static at first. Then a voice. Mine. Testing. 1, 2. Can you hear me? My voice sounded younger. Excited. Scared. Okay. I think it's working. I'm up at the lake house with the others. We're gonna do it tonight. A pause. Then a whisper, barely audible. Another voice. Not mine. A child's. Don't forget us. Then screaming. Short. Sharp. Distant. The tape clicked off. I dropped it and backed away. Had I been here before? Had I done something? I staggered to the wall, pressing my hands against the boards, trying to anchor myself in the real. That's when I saw it. Carved into the inside of the attic door. You left US. I don't remember running. But I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was outside barefoot, knees bruised from the stairs, hands cut from broken glass. I didn't know where I was going. The trees? The road? Anywhere. But the forest had changed. It was thicker now. Darker. Like the trees had grown closer overnight, branches stitching together into a canopy that let no sun through. And in every direction I ran, I ended up back at the house. Like the woods were curling in on themselves. Like the house was center. I fell to my knees in the grass and screamed. Loud. Wordless. Desperate. Something answered. From below. A deep groan. A creaking, swelling sound. Like wood underwater. I looked at the lake. The dock was gone. The canoe, too. The water had risen, higher than before. Swallowed the shoreline. It lapped now at the porch steps. And something was moving in it. A shape. No, a structure. I backed away slowly. Because rising from the center of the lake was another house. Not a reflection. Not a trick. A mirror. Same size. Same shape. But wrong. Windows too dark. Roof warped. Door open, though nothing stood behind it but black. As it surfaced, the children rose again. Standing now. Waist deep. Hands held. Smiling. Waiting. And the lake between the two houses rippled, like something beneath it was breathing. Or turning over. I heard a voice in the back of my mind. Soft. Familiar. We made it for you. You left us in the dark. Now come back to the water. I stepped onto the porch, not fully aware I was moving. The lake whispered. The boards were slick beneath my feet. In the doorway, I looked back once, at the trees. At the car still parked at the edge of the gravel drive. At the open forest that stretched past the bridge. and realized something. There was no road anymore. No bridge. Just the house. And the lake. And the children. I took one step forward. The water touched my toes. Warm. Welcoming. The mirror house watched me. Waited. The real house creaked behind me. I could feel it pulling. Bending. Choosing. I was already halfway submerged when I realized. The lake didn't just reflect. It remembered. And now it was rebuilding me. Part 5. What Stays Beneath. The water was warm at first. A stillness settled over me as I stepped deeper, the surface reaching my thighs, then hips. My breath slowed. Not because I wasn't afraid, because the lake wouldn't let me be afraid. Every part of my body that passed beneath the surface felt lighter. Not cleansed. Hollowed. Behind me, the house creaked louder. A long groan of protest, like wood pulling itself apart. I turned to look, and my chest locked tight. The real house, my house, was sinking. Not collapsing, not burning. Just slipping down, board by board, into the soil like a body into quicksand. And across the lake, the other house waited. The mirror. The wrong one. Fully surfaced now. Porch dry. Door open. And the children, 5 of them, stood before it. Waiting at the water's edge with their feet just kissing the surface, unmoving. Perfectly still. They smiled at me. I didn't smile back. But part of me wanted to. Because that was the worst part. Something deep in me felt like this was right. Like I had come back to something long overdue. I remembered their names then. Not all at once. Just glimpses. A laugh here. A scream there. A boy who'd fallen into the lake and hadn't come back up. A girl who bled from her ears after spending a night in the basement. A dare. A circle of salt broken. A story whispered too close to the shoreline. And me. Watching. Not stopping it. Not then. Not now. I was halfway across the lake when the surface turned to glass. The water froze, not in temperature but in movement. Still. Heavy. The world around me blurred. Not dark, not light. Just gray. And all sound drained from the air except the distant chime of the porch bell, now ringing underwater with a deep, throat-like hum. I turned in place. The trees were gone. The sky had vanished. There was only the water beneath, and the mirror house ahead. And the children. Their feet weren't touching the lake anymore. They were on it. Standing atop the glassy surface, as if held by something beneath. They lifted their hands. Together. And pointed at the house. My house. The real one. Almost completely submerged now. Only the attic windows still visible, peeking out of the dirt like an eye slowly closing. And I saw a light inside. Flickering. Moving. Someone was up there. Me. I was at the attic window. Pounding on the glass. Screaming. Mouthing something I couldn't hear. My own eyes wide in terror. Trapped. I stepped forward, deeper into the lake. But the glass held. No ripples. No give. I fell to my knees. Pounded the water with my fists. It didn't move. Just shimmered. And somewhere deep below, I saw shadows. Hands. Hundreds of them. not reaching up, pulling down, dragging something beneath the surface, objects, memories, names, everything I'd forgotten, everything I'd chosen to forget. A new voice filled the air then, old, cold, calm. We don't drown here. We change. The children took a step back. The mirror house opened wider, and I felt myself pulled forward, not physically, but remembered. The way a story pulls you forward, page after page, toward an ending you knew was coming. Inside the mirror house, I found it all waiting. The circle of handprints, the necklace of baby teeth, the recorder playing a message on loop. Come back. Come back. Come back. And photos. So many photos. Every guest that had ever stayed here. All smiling. All standing on the dock. Some with hollow eyes. Some with no mouths. Some with my face. One photo, centered, framed in the hall, showed 5 children and a 6th standing behind them. Older. Watching. Hands on their shoulders. Me. I reached for it. And the glass cracked. Something laughed, sharp and wet, from the walls. The children followed me in. Silent. Dripping. Their footsteps didn't echo. They stood in a circle around me, and together they whispered. Place for you. Stay. Remember. The air thickened. The walls began to close in, folding like paper. The ceiling dipped low. The floor swelled. And the house breathed. I saw my skin begin to pale. My fingertips wrinkle. My reflection in the window smiled, on its own. And from outside, through the warped glass, I saw the real cabin sink into the earth completely. Gone. Replaced by trees. Untouched. As if it had never been there. And then the lake drained away. And with it, the world I knew. It's been quiet since. Most days I stand on the dock, watching the water. Sometimes I ring the bell. No one answers. Sometimes the house creaks with footsteps that don't belong to me. Sometimes a car pulls into the gravel drive. New guests. New faces. Sometimes they leave. Sometimes they stay. But I always make sure the necklace is waiting for them. And at night, when the lake is still, I hear them laughing. My brothers. My sisters. The children under the lake. And they whisper, one more. We only need one more. Then we can rest. Then we can sleep.